Welcome back, everyone. Our panellist, Johann Hari, has got a new book out, Lost Connections, Uncovering the Real Causes of Depression and the Unexpected Solutions. You touched on it a bit earlier, but tell us the whole story.
There was this kind of mystery really hanging over me when I started researching this book, which was, why are so many people in our culture becoming so depressed and anxious? 1 in 5 Americans is going to take a psychiatric drug in their lifetime. 1 in 4 middle-aged women is taking an antidepressant at any given time. And this was really personal for me. When I was a teenager, I'd gone to my doctor and I'd explained that I had this very deep sense of pain. I felt very ashamed of it. I couldn't regulate. I felt like this pain was leaking out of me. And my doctor told me a story. He said, "We know why you feel this way. There's a chemical called serotonin. Some people lack it in their brains. You're clearly one of them. Solution is just to drug you." And as I spent 3 years researching this, interviewing the leading scientists in the world who discovered what causes depression and anxiety, I discovered that was way too simplistic, what I was told. There are actually 9 causes of depression and anxiety for which there's scientific evidence, lots of which are increasing and playing out around us in ways that require very different solutions. Of course, chemical antidepressants should play a role, but they're not solving the problem for huge numbers of people. So what are the specific
things that are the causes and solutions?
Yeah, I'll give you an example, one that I think people will like, well, there's so many. If you feel controlled at work, you are much more likely to become depressed. If you go through childhood trauma, as Nadine was saying, you're much more likely to become depressed. I'll give you an example and a solution. There's been a massive increase in loneliness. We are the loneliest society there's ever been.
Theresa May appointed a minister of loneliness, did she not?
Yeah, and there's a study that asks Americans, how many close friends do you have who you could call on in a crisis? When they started doing it years ago, the most common answer was 5. Today, the most common answer is none. And I was looking at, well, what would be an antidepressant for that? That drives up depression. Really fascinating. A doctor called Sam Everington in East London was really uncomfortable because he had loads of patients coming to him who were acutely depressed. And he'd been told, just tell them you've got a chemical imbalance, offer them nothing but drugs. Like me, he's not against the drugs, but he saw this isn't enough. He pioneered a different approach. A woman called Lisa Cunningham came to him. She'd been shut away in her home with acute depression and anxiety for 7 years. He said to her, I'll keep giving you the drugs, but I'm going to prescribe something else. I'm going to prescribe for you to take part in a group. There was an area of kind of scrubland next to the doctor's surgery. He said, I'm going to turn up to support you. I want you to meet with other depressed and anxious people twice a week, and we're going to turn this into a beautiful garden.
Isn't that great? So, Namika, what I love about that is just, it feels like there's so many of these things that become bureaucratic and technocratic, these policy issues we discussed, but it's such a human response.
Well, this is what Lisa...
I wanted to get Namiki's...
Yeah, sure, sorry.
Well, to me, it seems like a corporate response. I mean, there's money to be made in depression, and...
Oh, so the cause of it, yes, you're right.
100%. Yeah. And, you know, we've lost a sense of community. I mean, we're on our cell phones, we have all of our friends online, but instead we go out to dinner with someone, and what are you doing? You're on your phones. I mean, we've become isolated as a society. You know, the rise, and we could probably trace it back to the 50s when suburbia started to, people got in their cars, they drove from work to home, and now, you know, we live in an isolated world. So I completely understand.
One of the reasons we know you're so right is that that program, that gardening program, as Lisa put it to me, as the garden began to bloom, we began to bloom. A major study of a similar program found it was more than twice as effective as chemical antidepressants.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I mean, it's all fascinating stuff. I do think... I'm sure you're not going to be surprised to hear me say that I kind of balk at the idea of a government response to this kind of stuff, because I know that I agree that we should be talking about policies and programs that affect our kids and mental health and our mental health. And I agree we're over-medicated.
Well, I think that's... I agree with that warning, but I think, Namika, you made a really important point there, which is the current system and the government backing for it is what's pushing all this medication through the corporate stuff.
Medicare for all,
I'm really
held
sorry.
Up by
you know what?
What we've got to do is expand our idea of what an antidepressant is. Chemical antidepressants should remain on the table.
That's good.
But in Lost Connections, I talk about 7 different kinds of antidepressant, things that have been proven to reduce depression and anxiety. And the most effective ones are the ones that deal with the reasons why we're in such deep pain in the first place.
Again, I just think, read the book, see the solutions, and I just love this whole way of thinking about these deep problems. Thank you so much.
Cheers, Steve.
Thanks
Steve.
all of you.